Here's another reality of the housing market situation that you don't really hear a lot of people talking about. Um, so we have this rising housing costs, real estate just going up and up and up and up out of control. Now you got interest rates going high. That means higher mortgages, which translates to higher rent that the homeowners are going to be looking for in order for it to be sustainable, right? If you're renting out apartments, it's a business, right? Any business, you gotta look at your costs versus your income, right? Um, you also have limited inventory, which is pushing the prices up. Now, there is a tendency within the progressive circles in this country to focus on the evil landlord mentality. These greedy landlords just, you know, charging all this money and you know, grass is greener. They're just so wealthy. Um, but here's a bit of a conundrum that I don't think I haven't heard anyone really talking about. As a person that rents out apartments, you can't just keep increasing the price um, just with no limit or consequence. Here's the other side of that situation that I think is missing from the conversation. As you increase your rent prices, the pool of qualified renters goes down, right? As the rents go higher, the required income to meet the 30% of your gross income rule, right? Your rent shouldn't be more than 30% of your gross income. To find renters who meet that requirement, and these are therefore low risk renters, right? Because someone who is renting out apartments doesn't want to run into a situation where they have a renter who isn't paying the rent and then they have to evict them and there's all these legal costs and months of not making any money. You don't want to deal with that, right? No one wants to deal with that. It's a hassle. You got somebody maybe to destroy your property. I mean, it's bad news. Nobody wants to deal with that, right? So you want the most lowest risk tenants, right? And part of the risk comes in terms of how much the rent is. The higher the rent is, the more squeezed the tenant is in terms of how much of a struggle it is to pay the rent. So, in terms of the risk of them falling behind, someone that has really, really high rent is a higher risk of essentially defaulting, right? Getting to a point where something happens and then the rent is like, oh my goodness, how am I going to pay this? And then they stop paying, right? So, the pool of people that this is not that much of an issue becomes smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. I'll give you a case in point. Um, my rents are right around $2,000 to $2,200 a month, and that's due to the complex market that I'm in. Right now, there's rents 25, 26, $2,700, and you're not even getting something fancy for that, right? So I'm a great bargain at $2,000, $2,100. But and that's for the market, right? Obviously, you go out in Florida or somewhere in the middle of the country, that's a lot of money. But just to give you perspective, $2,700. I mean, an hour away from me, paying that kind of rent might get you something that's not really anything to brag about. Probably not in a bad neighborhood, but nothing that like, man, look at your place is amazing, right? So just to give you perspective, for someone to qualify to rent from me at those prices, you got to be making around $90,000 a year. $90,000 a year, right? That's where we're at. What percentage of the population makes that kind of money? Now, in particular, in my area, the numbers would be even lower than normal, right? There's not a lot of people that are making $90,000 a year. So there is a point of diminishing returns. The idea of me just like increasing and increasing and increasing and increasing, um, without incomes being increased as well, it becomes a problem, right? So here's where we're going. So the price of houses are going up. The house that I bought went up by $100,000 in a year before I purchased it, right? So my mortgage is much bigger than whoever had it before. So I need to have more rent in order for it to be sustainable, right? It's a great cost, a huge liability, a big home. Yeah, pipe burst or something, tens of thousands of dollars I got to come up with cash potentially. Um, so if I sell my home, in a couple of years, I mean, maybe the mortgage, maybe the price of the home goes up another $200,000 or something ridiculous. That means an even bigger mortgage for the next person. So the next person, maybe they need $2,500. Who in the hell makes $2,500 is able to pay that kind of rent in my area? So this is where this is pushing towards. This is pushing towards high vacancy rates, right? Your apartment is vacant for a very long time because you have a lot of unqualified tenants where the rent would be 50% of their income, 60% of their income. That's high risk. So you don't want to rent to people that it's that much of a stretch, right? So you get a lot of noise in terms of unqualified tenants, people who want to roommates and all. That's high risk. If it takes a combined income to pay the rent, and you guys have a divorce, your friends and you fall out, your family and you fall out, one person leaves, the person who's left behind is going to be struggling, and then you put yourself in that scenario where high risk of them falling behind on the rent, which is bad news for me, right? So it becomes increasingly difficult to find low risk, highly qualified tenants the more the rents go up. So it's not just a magic thing of just like, oh, it's going to keep pushing up the rent, and one day I'm gonna get to $3,000 a month. Who in the hell is going to have the money to pay $3,000 rent to me, who wouldn't just buy a home instead, right? Now I can lower my rents, right, to increase the pool of tenants, but by doing so, my my net income is gonna suffer, and then that's gonna also put me in a more vulnerable situation in terms of, again, owning a home, a big home, like I do, is a huge liability. I mean, I just had to take out a $20,000 loan just to do some very, very basic renovations on an apartment that I had just gotten back. $20,000 just like that. So based on the renovations that I did, now imagine if, and this is like drywall work and kitchen. Imagine if there's some kind of damage that happens and it's not covered by insurance or something like that, or just a failure. I mean, yeah. So it's a tricky thing. And then here's where things ultimately end up. This is the thing that I think the progressives need to focus on. Big banks. Big banks don't care about this stuff, right? They potentially might be okay with having a unit vacant for 6 months, right? They got deep pockets. They might be okay with waiting 6 months to get someone to pay the $2,500 rent or $3,000 rent, right? They can handle that. Very, very wealthy people can handle that. So it's not the small landlords like myself that you should worry about. In fact, I think you should work together with people like myself. I know there's bad landlords out there, but small landlords need to be protected, because when we fail, everybody fails, right? Because we lose our homes, BlackRock steps in and buys our homes. And those are the guys that are going to push the rents up like massively because they can pay the lawyers. They can wait 6 months. They can wait a year. They can sit on a property vacant for a year, 2 years, whatever it is, in a ridiculous amount of times, just knowing that in the end, they're going to get the profits they're looking for. And they don't care about you. They don't care about the community. They're looking at spreadsheets. All they care about is the profit and the return to their investors, right? So when you're looking at rent increasing, don't just assume that all these landlords are just greedy. And when you treat the landlords like savages, in terms of like you just don't care about them, they don't matter, you think they're all, they're all Elon Musk or something, and you allow them to fail with policies that are too weighted in favor of the tenant and not really giving the landlord any power. When you allow the small landlords like myself to fail, BlackRock will really teach you a lesson, right? They're ready for you. Let us fail. They would love to buy my house and other people's homes, right? Turn it into a condo, rip it down, buy off the politicians, right? That's how they get down. So I think in a similar way to when we think about small businesses failing and then these big businesses step in, you think about what you lose in terms of the community. You have Joe's hardware store. Joe knows your kids. Joe actually thinks and cares about you, potentially, not necessarily. And then you got this big major corporation just coming in and taking all the business, and small shops go out of business. And in these big shops, they monopolies, and they just playing a whole different game, right? Same kind of thing applies to rent. And for those who think that rent, everyone should have a home and rent should be free or whatever it is, that's on you. If that's your view. But the way that works is you're talking about a more socialistic policy, right? But that's government, right? So if that's what you want, go yell at government. Go talk to your politicians, and you push them and advocate for them providing free housing. Don't come to me as a private citizen, right? Okay, if that's your ideology, stick with your ideology. Advocate for the government to provide housing for all. Don't advocate for a private owner to have their property taken away and used as like a homeless shelter. And that's stuff that I've covered in other videos. Like that doesn't help you, doesn't help anyone. Anyway, this is the Debate Me channel, Debate Me comment section below. Click on the like button, subscribe, smash that bell. Be well.